Hi everyone, and welcome to our short 10-minute video on good presentation and structure of your assignment. Now I'm going to hand over to our tutor James, who's going to talk you through.
Thank you, Charlotte. Hello, everybody. In this short video, we're aiming just to help you with really good presentation of your work. Now, this is in your benefit to do because somebody has to mark your work, of course, and the easier we can make it for them, the more likely it is that you'll pass or that there'll be no confusion over what you've written as to what gets marked. So it's really important that we think about who's going to have to mark your work as you write it for an audience that's specific, and make sure we follow some good practice we'll lay out today for you. So this is to help you just to get that logical, good academic grade structure in place in your work. The first thing I'm going to remind everybody of or talk about is the three golden rules that we say that help you with answering any academic question on any of the assignments. And we recommend that you apply these rules to every single question that you answer, and they are to define anything in the question which may be arguable or subjective or woolly. Terms like leadership, terms like strategy, terms like culture, terms like trust, these are bandied around everywhere, but nobody agrees on what they mean. It doesn't really matter that you're right and wrong on these terms, but what does matter is you've got consistency in your definition of them, and then that follow through from your work so it's nice and clear and aligned. So definitions is a good one, and it's underused. Markers do appreciate it when you set your stall out and lay out key terms really clearly in your assignments. The next one would be always, always, always meet the command verb. This is the first place the marker goes to when they get your work. So have you critically appraised? Have you evaluated? Have you discussed? That's the first thing they go to. So you get marked primarily actually on the structural response in your answer as much as the content. So it's an immediate refer if you haven't met the command verb. Our advice is to make sure you've got a copy of the command verb definitions either printed out ideally or digitally available to you. So always cross-referencing. Have you answered the question in the way they've asked you to answer it? This is really key, and it's the most common reason people get referred on their assignment submissions. And the final of our three rules is less is more. Because word count is always constricted, then you need to ensure that in your work, you're not going off on tangents down rabbit holes and writing the book on something that just requires you to answer the question. So when we're choosing less is more, we on all the different levels of assignments that are taught, it's important you don't just list something. We need to usually dig into what is it about the thing that's impactful, or what's your critical assessment of the thing. And then to apply the command verb and give us the depth required, it's necessary not to have too much breadth. So we don't generally want lists. We tend to want you to decide what the most important and relevant factors are for the question. Choose things that maybe contrast with each other a little bit as well, be really good to help the richness of your response, and then apply the command verb to those different areas. So it's just think about how could I choose things that contrast nicely and give them the required depth of answer. This is good practice in your answers to the assignment. So we've got definitions, command verb, and less is more to kick us off with. How you write your assignments then. So presentation is really important. Typically, when you take the question apart, they tend to lend themselves naturally to like a paragraphed or bullet pointed response. In other words, you're taking two, three different aspects of the question, and you're going to lay that out in your response in two, three different paragraphs. You deal with each different thing in part. So I don't know, if you're asked to look at the interrelationship between the skill set and the mindset to develop as a strategic leader, you have one paragraph looking at how the relationship works one way, another paragraph looks at the other way. So you know you've got both. If you're doing a coaching and mentoring assignment, you'll have one paragraph to look at mentoring, another paragraph look at coaching. You don't miss anything, then you cover the whole question. So it's a case of giving all the different elements of the question like kind of air time and equal weighting in your response, and not just over focusing on one thing, then you forget the rest and you get referred. So a really good separated, compartmentalized, logical structure really helps. Try to avoid streams of consciousness where it's just a block of text. It's really hard to pick apart what's needed when you're marking those. What we want to see is kind of, what do I need to know? Right, it's there. Okay, have you met that assessment criteria? Tick, move on to the next bit. To try and present your work in as logical a way as you can. The use of bullet points is sometimes good, certainly paragraph structure. At level 7, a good structure is definitional paragraph, just lay out your key terms, deal with the different components of the question in line, and at the end, maybe a summary of overall, then what do you think? That's a really good level 7 structure, particularly to apply to make sure you've wrapped up a good criticality in the response. We'd also say consider the use of tables. Those really lend themselves well when you're asked to compare a number of different variables to a number of different other variables. So if you've got more than one thing to map across different areas, you've got maybe two or three things to map against two or three things. I'm thinking table straight away because that gives you that matrix structure to look at, make sure that you're drawing the dots across every different variable together and it also saves you potentially some word count. If you do use a table, though, although the table itself doesn't form part of word count, sometimes it is necessary to add a bit more detail underneath than the table just gives you. So again, you might need a kind of a summary paragraph underneath that to look at the results and the comparisons therein. Diagrams are pretty good as well. Again, I'll just say here, the tutors and the markers probably know your models. You don't need to explain the models unless you're after in the question. But a little bit of light relief, a little bit of dropping a few images in there can help your work a little bit just to break it up and be a bit of a coat hanger to put your kind of models and theories on a little bit better. The other thing is I get asked a lot, do you write in third party or first party? Typically third parties or third person's the best. Make it objective, make it more neutral. However, there's plenty of cases where the question asks you to perhaps reflect or critically reflect, and that's asking you to go first person then. So it's entirely right that you might want to write from the first person at times, but you just flip or choose between the two. You might default to third person normally, but then sometimes bring a bit of yourself in there, which brings me on to my horse and cart approach. And again, we get this a lot where for most of the assignments, your question asks you to make general observations and treat general principles of the big themes and the metrics behind the topic you're looking at. So, what's strategy, what's leadership, what's culture? Those are universal things that you might just write about in the round. But what can help is to illustrate your answers with some lived experience and a little bit of reflection on that to bring it to life a little bit. So I always say the horse is the main principles, the main global ideas you're trying to get to, and the cart is to illustrate that with some of your experience. But what we don't want to do is put the cart first. So you just talk about what you know all the way through, and then you might have significant areas where you miss more wider context and the wider principles you're trying to get to. So I think those are the main things that we wanted to just remind people of today. Just be mindful of the person you're writing this for and see if you can get a nice logical structure throughout. Try and lay the structure out first. In fact, when you do your questions before you put the content in, can be a really good way to do it. So you put the skeleton in place before you put everything else in. And then you know that you're kind of meeting all the parts of the questions you need to do. You've broken it apart, reconstituted it, and there's very little risk then that you'll be referred because you've missed something.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. If you do have any other questions for us, you can contact us anytime on cmi@inpd.co.uk. And we look forward to receiving your assignments soon. Thank you very much.